Kyle Peterson from ESPN joins us, college baseball analyst. Kyle, how are you this morning?
Good morning, guys. How we doing?
Oh, there's that voice. KP, do you do that on purpose? You're like, this guy does radio for a living, but listen to my TV voice. How you doing, buddy?
No, I have but one. I'm I'm good.
I,
I'm
I,
really good.
I, I,
About to get nuts.
oh yeah, you're especially with this SEC tournament, and if you have to go on the road, I'll get to that in a second. I told Ravi, I said, man, I felt awkward. I said when I saw him at the funeral, the first thing I could muster with that great tan, you could tell he's been in the Bible Belt is, man, you look great. And I felt like, I don't know how appropriate that was given where we were, but that was the
Uh,
first thing I could say, man, you look fantastic. How you feeling?
well, I feel tan and fat. So, I guess if you're gonna be fat, at least you should be tan. You know. Um,
Wow.
the first one takes a while to solve. The second one we can take care of in a couple weekends. So, I'm good, man. It's I mean it's always crazy, and then we had state soccer quarters last night.
Yes,
They
you
won,
did.
so
Yes,
we'll
you
go
did.
to what do we got? I got Tennessee, Arkansas on Thursday, then drive back Friday morning, make a 2 o'clock game, and then have graduation. Apparently, it's a good idea to have a graduation party at your house. So that's Saturday, and then
We went through that. I'm glad you're
oh
cool, or
my
maybe
god,
you're not. And you're just playing it off. But
I'm just
man,
out of
that
it.
turned into a knockdown drag out with us.
Oh,
So good
they don't
on
even
you.
ask me. It's great. It's perfect. I don't. They don't ask me. They tell me what's happening. They tell me what to pick up. I mean, the only stressful thing I have is I got to go pick up 2 kegs on Saturday. Other than that,
For the old grad party,
I'm
huh?
good. Yeah, well,
Got to have something
yeah,
for the adults.
exactly. There'll
Hey,
be strict instructions, which I'm sure will be followed.
2 drink limit. It's like dollar beer at Jay's night. Hey, I'm sorry. Why are you've got one pinned against your forearm, one pinned against Tim? Now it's a grad party. We're not at the bar. Easy, easy.
We talked about this. Um, so yeah, and then graduate Sunday, and depending on if we're playing the finals, either go to SEC tournament Monday night or Tuesday, and off we go.
So how are you kind of capping this? Is you got a couple of teams that have gotten hot late. You want to believe in Georgia because of their offense, and then you're like, I don't know. But apparently, winning on the road in the SEC is miserable. How do you try to cap this thing?
I mean, I think it's pretty wide open, which is great. I mean, from an SEC tournament standpoint, the difference this year is everybody gets in, and the top fours get a double bye, and 5 through 8 gets a single bye. So if I mean, there's some of the top fours that don't play till Friday,
Yeah, yeah.
and 8 teams play on Tuesday. That's a pretty significant advantage, and the other advantage is you can set your rotation up for the postseason when you go in, because the earliest, if you're a top four, the earliest you're going to play is Thursday. So I mean, you can go whatever you plan to do in the postseason, you can kind of work it out through there. Now, granted, if you get beat, it doesn't matter because it's single elimination. My fear is just fan bases and whether they're all going to show up. Whether you take the chance to spend the money and go, if your team's playing on a Tuesday and you're a 9 seed, well, that 9 seed could potentially be in Omaha.
Yeah.
But if they get beat on Tuesday, they go home. Jackie Bradley Jr. was with us last weekend, which was a blast. And it was funny when South Carolina made their run, when they won 2 and then they almost won a third. They were horrible in the SEC tournament. Horrible every year.
Is that
And
that's
he's
when
like,
Roth
yeah,
threw like 81 innings, right, in Omaha?
yeah. And nobody knew his name the first year. He came in against Clemson. Like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he ended up pitching the big leagues. So it matters because it's a trophy and fans go nuts and everything else. But the reality is, like, as far as does it help you win a national championship or get to Omaha? No, it really doesn't. If you're super bubble and you can play your way and get in, great. But the chances of doing that in this tournament, the way it's set up right now, are pretty minimal.
So Kyle, I'm glad you brought up the bubble and kind of what that means within the context of the SEC tournament and standings here, because we had this discussion a little bit last week with, I think it was Aaron from D1 Baseball.
With Kentucky.
And yeah, and so you mentioned, the 9 seed in the SEC tournament could end up being in Omaha, and that doesn't seem crazy just from my vantage point here, but you get a little bit below that, right? You get to, because I think Ole Miss, if I'm reading this right, would be the 9 seed if it were started today. But then you get kind of down to that next group. You got your Kentucky, Oklahoma, Florida, Mississippi State is probably where I'll draw the line there, where you're sort of in this below 500 in the conference. The overall record still is pretty good, but not as gaudy. Like, how do you weigh those types of teams who obviously are playing really difficult conference games weekend in and weekend out versus somebody from, I mean, we used Creighton as an example the other day, where they basically have to go out and win every series. Otherwise, they're not even going to have a shot. And like, how do you weigh those two things? Because they're both very pressurized situations, just in a very different way. And if you're the NCAA committee, like, which one would you personally value?
I mean, I guess I think they're all created differently. The challenge is you can easily go back to who'd you play out of conference and who'd you beat out of conference. And I mean, for all the teams that you rolled off, Florida's got series win against Florida State, series win against Miami non-conference.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good. And eye test, even though Florida, honestly, right now is down their leadoff 2-hole and 3-hole guy, eye test still works, especially from an arm standpoint for Florida. Creighton is interesting for me because RPI is looked at differently based on where you are at in the country and based on what conference you are in.
Yeah.
So look at A&M. Okay. A&M is a team that can play in Omaha.
Yeah, with attendance. Yeah.
They could. I mean, A&M beat Arkansas in a 3-game series. They won at Tennessee. They beat LSU, who's now number 1, in a 3-game series. And then they've had some weekends where you're like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, they're 10-17 in the conference, right?
Hammered them. 10-17. Missouri was 0-24 in the conference, and they went in and hammered them 3 straight. So A&M's RPI is 57. They're not getting in.
Yeah, 1 behind Creighton.
If Creighton's RPI is around 57, Creighton's getting in because it's looked at totally differently. Like, hold it, you had a chance to boost within your league and you weren't able to do it. And if you're Creighton, well, you really don't. And also when you look at Creighton, like everybody else that people are talking about to be an at-large, well, they beat them this year. They beat Xavier. They beat St. John's. They beat UConn. And they finished at Georgetown this weekend. So, I mean, I'll go Creighton specific. I think Creighton may get the benefit of the doubt. They finished at Georgetown. I mean, it'd be great to sweep them, but you got to win 2 out of 3. If you win the league outright and you go in and you look at it and go, hold on, you like Xavier, we beat them. You like St. John's, we beat them. You like UConn, we beat them. You better like us because the RPI may not say it, but ultimately they took 2 out of 3 for Nebraska, which I know is not a top RPI team. But if you really get in the committee room and you start looking at it, Creighton should favor it. Now you got to go win a series this weekend, but Creighton should favor OK without having to win the Big East tournament. For me, now I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it should.
Kyle, let me ask you something. Just for instance, right? I look at Oregon and I can't figure them out. It just kind of depends on the weekend, but I think they're going to have a distinct advantage, as let's say if they're a host going at their place. And I look at a team like, who I think is a similar comp in Auburn. They've won 3 in a row. I think they got 16 wins in the conference. Not very good on the road, but again, if you're going conference affiliation, is that a fair comp where you take a look at a team in a power conference in the Big Ten, although not near as deep, or capable championship caliber teams at the top? But I look at an Oregon and an Auburn, and I'm thinking, well, this isn't football. Hard to compare. Like, is that a good comp for how you may value RPI within said conference?
Yeah, from an RPI standpoint, I think it is. I think for anybody, when you start, I guess, comparing 1-to-1, I think you look at conference standings, but then you also do really look at non-conference. And Oregon's non-conference, while outside of Oregon State, really isn't very good.
Mm.
They swept all 4 games they played with Oregon State. And that's going to matter when you get to the end of it. Auburn's a pretty cool story. I mean, Auburn was not good last year at all. And that's not exact. Now, I mean, listen, the environment is a little bit different to have the ability to turn things around right now because NIL, you can flip it pretty quick. But Auburn's a team that has been really good in league. They're another team that beat Oregon State non-conference. They went and won a non-conference tournament on the road.
They've been really good at home, too.
They've been great at home. Yeah. And so I do think, I think Auburn ends up, they get Ole Miss this weekend. I think it's there. I think they go on the road this weekend. But I think Auburn compares more favorably right now. But I don't think I don't think they're that far behind. And listen, Oregon, as it stands right now, I think it's third in the Big Ten.
Mm.
Now, there's some pretty good clubs in the Big Ten, especially at the top. It doesn't help that Oregon State went in and won 2 against Iowa last weekend, and they tied a third because of a travel deal. That doesn't make the league look that much stronger because you look at it, Oregon pounded them, Auburn beat them.
And everybody uses Iowa's schedule against them, right?
Well, I think you kind of have to.
Yeah.
I mean, they've won a ton of games, and they absolutely deserve to be in the conversation. If you win the league, that should matter because they don't control who they play. But who they do play this weekend is going to make a difference because they play Oregon. So I think this weekend's going to go a ways to figuring out what Iowa is, and then ultimately, is Oregon a top 8? I think they got a real chance.
Kyle, as you're looking at the SEC and some of the top teams in that, I look at Georgia, they're 10-10 on the road. I look at Auburn, they're 6-9 on the road. I look at Vanderbilt, they're 10-9 on the road. I look at Arkansas, 8-7, LSU, 6-7. Is there anything that you're a little concerned about some of these teams that are so home heavy in terms of their record? I mean, Georgia's like 28-3, for instance. And when you start getting into, they'll obviously be away for the SEC tournament, but most of these teams will be at home for regionals and supers. Is there any point where you say, maybe this doesn't translate to Omaha, or what do you do with those road records that are pretty lackluster compared to the rest of the season for them?
Well, I think first you go to their power numbers because
and the ballpark, yeah.
Now it's a little bit different now, and I don't think the ballpark effect is what it used to be in the past, at least as significant. I mean, we've seen more home runs lately, which is good, but home runs across the board are down like 8% this year in college baseball. So, I mean, it's not the craziness that it had been, but Georgia plays in a very offensive-friendly ballpark now. They're built for that. They're recruited for that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's where you play most of your games. So I do think it's significant advantage Georgia if they can play at home all the way to get to Omaha. And they don't only have to hit it out of the ballpark, but it helps. And then I'll flip it and go to a team like Vanderbilt, where they're starting to hit more home runs. Their ballpark is somewhat offensive, but I wouldn't call it one of the more offensive in the SEC. But they steal a ton of bags. I think there's 4 guys in the lineup with double-digit stolen bases. They defend at a really high level, and they're going to hit enough home runs that them leaving that place at some point probably isn't as big of a difference, and they really pitch it, which is going to help you in that ballpark. Then I think it's a little bit more. So, yeah, I think the home road thing, I go first and foremost to what are your power numbers and potentially how can a ballpark affect it. And for a team like Tennessee, who's probably not going to, maybe they probably will host, but they're not going to be a top 8. And a Georgia, yes, you play in very offensive ballparks. You're a very offensive team. Ultimately, Omaha can have, I would even say, more of an effect this year than it did last year, just because home runs are down.
So I don't want to use Vanderbilt and steal the time because you just talked about it. Let me give you another team. When you get them away from the ballpark, they got a losing record on the road, but they're 4-0 in neutral sites. A lot of people listen, it's LSU, so I get what's to like. Is that a team who you're willing, because of how they play, to overlook where they play?
Yeah, I mean, listen, LSU hasn't been that massive home run team. Yeah. They've been good, but it hasn't been like off the charts, gorilla ball, hitting a million home runs. they're a little bit of an enigma. They don't have a great top to bottom offense. Yeah, they play great at home, but I mean that place is like a unicorn. I mean, crazy the stuff that happens there. The stuff that happened there this year after 1 o'clock in the morning 2 different times. So they always will have a massive advantage. Here's the deal for LSU though: when they get here, they got a massive advantage too because half the state shows up.
Yeah.
So their ballpark advantage travels as much as anybody. Arkansas is gonna travel. If they get it, I think Arkansas is the best team in the country. And if Arkansas gets here, they will show up. It's a 6-hour and 20-minute drive. I'll make it on Friday. It ain't far to get up here. And so I think for those, it doesn't limit ballpark effect, but if you load it with your own fan base, and we've seen this lately with the SEC teams that have rolled in here and bought out half the city when they show up, you start feeling like you're playing at home.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've been to Fayetteville twice for AAU, and I'm like, it's an easy 6-2. It's a couple of turns and you're there. So I get it. Is it Texas's health issues, kind of their concerns with what's going to happen on the mound that has you given a little pause to the Longhorns?
No, I mean they don't. They pass the eye test as somebody that you say, hey, yeah, I mean they're a top 10, 15 team in the country and a team that's got a chance to get here, but not a whole lot of wow factor offensively. They're good. What Texas does, as well as literally anyone in the country, is defend and control the running game. And it goes back to Schloss. And Max Wiener, their pitching coach, is really, really good at varying looks. No one has stolen third base on Texas the entire year. No one.
Jeez.
If you went and watched Vandy run wild on Tennessee this weekend,
Yeah, well,
they stole third base 3 or 4 times.
is this the double steals?
And they just, I mean, you want to talk about green light. I mean, I don't know. It was neon. Like, you get on, you're going.
Yeah.
And what Texas can do is they can control facets of the game that don't necessarily get looked at right away, but directly affect the outcome of the game. They lost their ace. They're not going to get him back. Max Ballou was a Big 12 Player of the Year last year, broke his hamate, or excuse me, it was a wrist issue. He should be back. They should get him back for the postseason. I don't know if it'll be SEC tournament. That's a big offensive boost because that's their best hitter. They got a freshman 5-star safety playing left that gets better every day. Kid that's supposed to be a high school senior right now, John Williams, who is so much fun to watch. And so some of these is you get Ballou healthy, you get Williams more at bats. They're going to hit enough, and their pitching numbers are still very good. But I think that the thing with Texas is I'd be shocked if they beat themselves. And there's a lot of other teams. Tennessee beat themselves this weekend. I've seen other teams beat themselves this year. Texas ain't going to do that.
Let me flip conferences because they've got a huge one. I'm a diehard Carolina guy, and I'm constantly let down. But I will say this: you talk about teams that aren't real sexy top to bottom. It's offensively just okay. They're grimy though, about as grimy as a Carolina team could be. They got a huge series with FSU this weekend to close it out. When you look at the ACC. And I get it. FSU's hitting 325 as a team. Who's best built to crash the SEC party if there's a showdown in Omaha?
I think Florida State is because I think they have 2 aces. And historically, we talk about pitch and depth a lot in a regional, because especially if you get beat, because you could come back all the way through and you're playing doubleheaders and everything else. You don't play doubleheaders in Omaha. You get time off.
Yeah.
So the depth of a staff, you don't need to be 11 or 12 deep. You got to be like 6. And if you get 6 real dudes, you got a chance to run through it and essentially not use anybody else for meaningful innings. Doesn't always happen that way, but it definitely can. And Florida State goes ace-ace. And if you go ace-ace, then I think you have an advantage when you get to Omaha over everybody. You probably have an advantage the whole year, but I think the advantage is bigger in Omaha because of the off days.
Who's the next best?
So if there's somebody,
sorry.
Within the ACC?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but who's the next best team
No,
in the
you're good.
ACC then?
I still think it's Clemson. And Carolina's right there too. But I still think it's Clemson. I would, and this is totally dependent upon whether they can pick the ball up and throw it to first base. But if Wake Forest can do that and they get in, Wake Forest could be a pain. Because they can be very offensive. There's some power arms. The defense has not been good this year. In fact, they're kind of a head-scratcher team. I saw them against Clemson. And Clemson beat them. But got done, and you're like, I think the team in black's probably better. But they haven't been. I think Wake could be a surprise team when they get to the postseason because it's kind of like Florida last year. You get to the postseason, you're like, I don't really care what happened for the 4 months before this. We're 0-0. And then Florida was one of the best teams in the country for the next 3 weeks. I'm not saying Wake can make the same type of run, but it wouldn't shock me if we look up and Wake's playing in the Super with a chance to go to Omaha.
That's kind of disappointing, Kyle. I'm thinking I finally have some arms on the back end, and I get it. You've got a stud hurt, but you get one back in Chapel Hill, and I'm thinking they've always been kind of this pretty sexy team. This is kind of an ugly. This is not a traditional Chapel Hill team. So I'm like, I'm cautiously optimistic that they won't believe their own hype because I've seen that for the last 20 years now.
History would tell you that whatever I just said probably means that North Carolina's going to make one hell of a run.
I am curious to see if they can slow down FSU, though, just to give me a little bit of a precursor for how I think the postseason is going to go. Because that offense for Florida State is, pretty ridiculous.
They can get humming pretty quick.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Kyle, let me ask you this. As let's say there's going to be most projections have 11, 12 SEC teams in the field right now. If I give you national champion, give me SEC or the field. I know you see a ton of the SEC, obviously pretty high on them. Which one are you taking there?
I think given recent history, it'd be crazy not to take the SEC.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think you're going to see some kind of surprise fireworks in the postseason.
You like Irvine?
Because I don't think there's that. Yeah, Irvine's more offensive than West Coast teams usually are, and I think that could play well. They've stubbed their toe a little bit towards the end of the year, but I think Irvine can make a run. But I think it can be. I like the Sun Belt. I like Troy. I like Southern Miss. I like Coastal.
Coastal's
I think you're gonna see. I think you're gonna see some surprises because I don't see. Maybe you see the gap of guys coming out of the bullpen throwing 96, and the SEC is gonna have more of those guys than anybody. Go look at Mississippi State's bullpen. Mississippi State will roll 3 guys out that honestly look like they're big leaguers right now from a stuff standpoint. Now, they may not control it and everything else, but they'll go 97, 98, 97 out of the bullpen, and you're like, hold on, they just fired their coach. Like, these guys are good.
Yeah.
So I think that, I think Arkansas is the best team. That being said, they had to win game 3 at LSU to not get swept last weekend. But I'd be shocked if it's really chalky in Omaha this year. It doesn't feel like it will be.
Kyle, as you sit there, you go, okay, Arkansas is the best team. You like some of the bullpen arms, that gap in Mississippi State versus Arkansas there. How big is the gap to you between Arkansas and whoever you think the second best team is in the SEC?
Oh, minute. LSU's number 1 in the country, and they just beat them. Vandy's in that conversation. Georgia's in that conversation. Auburn's in that conversation. No, I think it's minimal. You get a shortstop that's made 4 errors the whole year. You've got an offense that is different from what we've seen in Arkansas in years past, to where they're very I would say in recent years past, to where they can be really offensive. And they're always going to pitch. Zach Root's a first rounder. To get Gage Wood back last 3 weeks ago, I guess. He first pitched against 98.
Is that long enough to be stretched out for him?
It will be, yeah.
Okay.
It will be. He went 50 or so 2 weeks ago. I didn't see how many he went against LSU, but yeah, I mean, he can give you 5 or 6 when you get into the postseason for sure. And then they got just bullet after bullet coming out of the pen. So I think the gap is fairly small, but if you just go, okay, most complete, who do you think it is? From everybody that I've seen and watched, I think it's Arkansas.
All right, let me get you out on this, KP. For if we're on Bubble Watch for you, who's the best of the three between? And I get what Kentucky just did to Oklahoma. Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Florida. Who would you take of those three?
Oh, Florida without a doubt.
Okay.
And I'd probably take Oklahoma second. I know what just happened, and I'd probably take Kentucky. Kentucky's hard to. They're hard to buy into, and this is like it's intended to be a compliment. I don't know if it will sound that way, but Kentucky wins more games than they should win.
Mm.
They just do.
Mm.
And its approach, they will do absolutely anything at absolutely any point. I mean, Minge is one hell of a coach, man. I would love to see what Kentucky would look like with uber talent. Because I think he'd get confused and he wouldn't really know what to do. Because like all of the other stuff that they do, do you do as much if you can wait for the 3-run homer? I don't know. Florida's back healthy on the mound, which is big. They were good again. Florida started 1-11 in the league, guys, and if they sweep this weekend, they could host.
Mm.
Like that's if you want to look at a second half team, Florida's been pretty good in the second half, and they've played some pretty good clubs. And OU, I mean, you got, Kyson Witherspoon could be the first college arm taken. So you start with that. It's a similar offense to Kentucky to where they're going to pressure you on the base paths, very different than Florida. They're going to pressure you on the base paths. They go first to third a ton. Witherspoon is a true ace. He's a big leaguer, and he should be there for a long time. Not as much pitching depth for OU, but as good an ace as there is in the league. So, but all that being said, I'd go Florida, OU, Kentucky, even though last weekend would make me look like a total idiot.
You the man, KP.
That's our guy, Kyle Peterson, ESPN SEC Network. Kyle, appreciate the time as always. Enjoy graduation this weekekend.
Man, it's like you're navigating. It's like you're navigating Florida State's lineup, having to juggle this week, man. Best wishes.
I'll be watching. See you, boys.
All right,
Good
buddy.
talking to you.
Yep.